To help me address these and many other questions that will be discussed on this edition of the burning issue, I have in the studios former ambassador to Ethiopia, Emmanuel Mwamba, who is also the Patriotic Front presidential hopeful, and Mr. Noel Nkhoma, an economist and Development Bank of Zambia board chairperson and member of the Public-Private Partnership Council. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this burning issue edition.
Thank you, Zach. Good morning.
Good morning, Zach. Good morning, Emmanuel. Good morning, listeners out there, and belated happy Women's Day to our beautiful women out there. I hope you had a nice time yesterday.
Great. So, in this edition today, let me emphasize that we are also live on our partner radio stations, and these are UPND FM radio in Mazabuka on 98.7, covering the rest of Southern Province. We are also live on Spice FM radio in Kawe, covering the rest of Central Province on 91.1 FM. Also live on IWAVE FM radio in Chingola, covering the rest of the Copper Belt on 90.1 FM. Last but not the least, we are live on MUCHINGA radio, that is in Chinsali, covering the rest of MUCHINGA province on 88.1. Live also on our Facebook page, that's 5FM Radio Zambia, and also on Smart Eagles. So later on in the course of the program, I will allow a few messages, of course, via WhatsApp and SMSs. And let me clearly state that I will get your contributions, you listeners, I'll get your contributions, or indeed SMS. If time will allow, we'll get very few phone calls. But the large part of your contribution and your questions, please send them to the number 0761 912493. The number again, of course. The second will basically talk about the delayed debt restructuring, how this is affecting the economy of Zambia and how this delay will continue to affect the economy. And then we'll discuss the Ndola, Lusaka dual carriageway, and probably many other sides that we are basically having a conversation. So it's a free-flow conversation, and we are here to do it for all Zambians out there who may want to know a lot about this country. So as stated in my opening, I mean, the debate on the state of the economy has mainly, taken a blame kind of the current, the party in government currently keeps talking about how the economy was obviously mismanaged, run down by the previous regime, and equally the previous regime is saying, but look, we left a better economy by where are we coming from? Why are we here where we are economic-wise?
Thank you very much. Honorable Noel Nkhoma is pointing at me, he's respecting protocol. Thank you, my dear brother. And I'm glad to be here with Honorable Noel Nkhoma. We know each other for a long time. And I'm also welcoming the idea that we are having a conversation. It's about our country.
Right.
The matter is not personal, it's not malicious, it's not to bring one another. Mm-hmm. I think at stake are the lives of our people. Yeah. And I've always stated that the criticism, personally, that we give is to build this country, not to destroy this country. Right. If President Hakainde Hichilema succeeds, Zambians benefit. If President Hakainde Hichilema fails, Zambia fails. So our criticism is meant to build, to engage, if the direction doesn't seem to be going very well, and that's why we raise this criticism. So let me start by congratulating our women like Honorable Noel Nkhoma had done. Happy Women's Day. Your turnout, whether you were from government, whether you were from corporates, whether you were from NGOs, whether you were from political parties, I think that was very good. We stand with our women. We want gender equality. We want gender empowerment. We want the women on the table to discuss the matters of our country, to be part of decision making. So congratulations to our women. Why are we here? The economy. we all agree that the state of the economy is in deep crisis. We have an economic crisis, there's no doubt. There are many indicators. First of all, the high cost of living, I think the highest it has been in many decades. Just look at the price of fuel. Just the other year in 2021, price of fuel was at 17 kwacha and 15 kwacha. Now it's at 27 and 28 kwacha for petrol and diesel. The cost of our foodstuffs, essential foodstuffs, cooking oil, milling meal, and sugar, and other associated essential foods, again, they've skyrocketed. This is affirmed by the JCTR's monthly test, which they do on high cost of living. So the basic food and nutrition basket just the other day was released, and again it has shown that other than in 2022 when it was at highest, when it was at 9,400, this time it has jumped to 9,200. So that's one of the best indicators. The exchange rate, as all of us worried, because since November, the kwacha has devalued from 16 kwacha, now it's racing towards 21 kwacha. We have a huge foreign debt. We have a huge public debt, both local and foreign debt. So we clearly have an economic crisis. And I think we are here now to discuss the solutions. The blame game does help to identify where is this from or who's not doing right. So even the blame game, I think, in my view, to be positive, it will not be negative. But we have to agree that the economy is far worse than it was in 2021 when the PF left it. The PF left foreign reserves of $3 billion. Remember, they were hovering around $1.9 billion, and the IMF did that subvention because of COVID-19 crisis, and they gave $650 billion across to especially low-income countries that were adversely affected by the COVID crisis. And Zambia benefited a $1.4 billion. So when President Edgar Lungu is handing over to President Hakainde Hichilema, we should remember that the exchange rate is at 15 to 16 kwacha, that there's foreign reserves of $3 billion, and there's work that has been done for the last 10 years. So I'll leave Honorable Noel Nkhoma to pick it up from there.
Yes, Honorable.
Thank you, Zaki, and thank you, Emmanuel, for breaking the ice. And I think what is important is that in whatever discourse that we're going to engage in, there must be history, right?
Right.
And in the same way, Ambassador Mwamba here is more or less pushing a narrative to the effect that the PF left a stronger economy than it is now. I think it's not correct. And I'll demonstrate why. And I think in all that we say, being a banker, economist, I think we all rely on figures. First of all, I would take the issues that he has raised,
Right.
which basically he has gone to demonstrate our failing. When I say our failing as a current government, UPND.
Right.
Now, first of all, Ambassador Mwamba, the PF left a broken economy, right? A broken economy which only thrived through what you call massaging, right? Spinning. They literally reached a stage where they could spin and massage the economy, right? First of all, what informs an economy? What informs an economy is the productivity in that particular economy. That is what we talk about in terms of the gross domestic product. At the time of our friends having assumed office, GDP was 20 billion plus, right? If I'm not mistaken, 23 billion, somewhere there. The time they were leaving, the GDP was getting closer to 20, if not below that. But I think, importantly, let us pick out just a few issues that he has referred to. The fuel price. The fuel price was massaged. I've been able to demonstrate that time and again that they used to get 3 months shipment using what you call a letter of credit issued by what then was called the PTA Bank, which is now Trade and Development Bank, right? Every shipment, probably $500, $600 million, right? Which basically meant that during that 3 months, they should have accrued sufficient kwacha cover to be able to purchase the foreign exchange to fund the letter of credit, right? That window basically gave them an opportunity to be able to manipulate the fuel price, which basically means that the fuel price that was obtaining in Zambia was not reflective of the fuel price which was obtaining on the international market, right? We are not an oil producing country. So, reality check, they reached a stage where they defaulted on the letter of credit with the PTA Bank, Trade and Development Bank. Professor Oliver Sasa is here, right? He was chairman of the board of the PTA Bank. And I know how many trips they made to State House to try and get this matter resolved. I'll be surprised if this matter has been resolved up to now. Now, UPND comes in and say, countrymen and women, let us face reality. We do not have money as a country to continue manipulating the fuel price. We shall have a cost-reflective fuel pricing mechanism, which I think is now informing us in terms of the fuel price. So to say that they left the fuel price at 15 kwacha, it was a massaged fuel price. Exchange rate. My brother, Ambassador Mwamba, talks about the exchange rate, which was basically 15 or 16 at the time they were living. At one point, I share so many conversations with Ambassador Mwamba here. I raised it with him to say it has never happened in the world economic theory that the inflation rate can be at par with the exchange rate. There's one time the inflation rate under the PF administration was at 24 and the exchange rate was also at 24. I said, there's something here which is not correct. Now, let's cut a long story short. He has just shared with us here that there was a cash injection of $1.4 billion as a consequence of the IMF COVID intervention, where through what you call a special drawing rights, right? So take out the 1.4 billion from the 3 billion foreign exchange reserves at the time which they were almost leaving office. It takes you back to 1.5 somewhere there, which is basically maybe two months import cover, right? Was not healthy. So the 1.4 or 3 billion was neither here nor there. Like what Ambassador Mwamba has shared with us, it was a global intervention, right? Then let's come to the issue of cooking oil. We are all aware that there were 2 statutory instruments which were passed leading to the elections to again manipulate the price of cooking oil, right? Which basically froze some certain duties and taxes, like the case was with the fuel pricing, to be able to hoodwink unsuspecting members of the public and voters to believe that the price of cooking oil was low, which was not. So you cannot run an economy through manipulation or massage. What we are doing, as I'm now speaking as UPND, right, is that we are trying to be as honest as we can to the Zambian people, right? That first of all, we inherited a broken economy. Debt, never seen before in the history of this country, right? Never seen. Dr. Kaunda left $7 billion debt. PF left almost 3 times the debt levels, right? And an economy which was underperforming. What was the economy, GDP at the time they were living? Negative almost 3%. When they inherited from MMD an economy which was almost firing at almost 8%, GDP growth. They brought it down to negative 3%. We are bringing it up again. I think, according to the projections, this year, all things being equal, we should be able to get 3%, if not more. So maybe, Zach, let me...
I can quickly respond.
Pause there. But I think what will be important is the fact that in whatever whatever narrative we push, let us back it up with figures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ambassador Mwamba, I would like you to come in and just try and respond to what Mr. Noel Nkhoma has brought out, but also with the fact that there are also subsidy issues here. Much as Mr. Nkhoma has said, massaged prices, but we need to also bring out the issue strongly of subsidies, because subsidies have been alleged that in your case, the reason why you refused the IMF bailout was because subsidy was going to be one of the conditions sitting on the IMF.
Oh, correct.
And now you are...
Before we even come to the IMF, which matter again will be contested here, is that to allege that we left a broken economy is not true. I think you can't spin with an economy. You cannot. You can't do propaganda with an economy. The figures, cost of living, tell. Our people will tell if they've eaten today. Our people will tell if they haven't eaten today. So you can't do propaganda with the economy because it affects the ordinary lives of our people. Fuel, we know what the issue should be with fuel, is that we have in Deni a dedicated refinery. We have in Deni a dedicated refinery and Tazama a pipeline, which then we should service to ensure that we have security of energy, that we have lower prices of fuel. Sorry, there's just a small incident we are resolving in the studio. That becomes very important. That's a long-term, it's been the long-term issue of our country, is that both Indeni and Tazama should work and should work very well. The use of private individuals and corporates to import fuel has been an issue because we then call the middlemen and we say that's why the price of fuel is very high. But let me come to the issue of a negative economy. We had the worst economic crisis in the entire world in 2020. No country registered a positive growth of GDP. No country other than China at 1% and Ethiopia at 1.5%. So all economies, in fact, COVID-19 crisis has been termed as one of those crises of the century rather than the First World War and Second World War. It was such the pandemic hit all sectors, whether they were economic, whether there was security, whether there was humanitarian, all aspects of our lives. Business came to a halt because of COVID. So yes, the economy registered the negative growth of 3.5% in 2020, but by 2021 we had rebounded. By the time President Hakainde Hichilema was taking over this economy, it was in positive. You can look at the data, statistics don't lie, it was in positive. Look at the GDP of economic growth of 2021. So in 2020 something happened because of this crisis. Government removed, to ensure that the price of fuel was cheaper for our people, and there's nothing wrong with intervening in an economy for our people, is that we suspended customs duty for fuel or petroleum products. We suspended VAT 16.5, customs duty is 25%, VAT 16%, excise duty is, I think it was about something like 27 ingwe per litre. These taxes on fuel were suspended because the economy was in distress. We had COVID crisis, jobs were lost, and government intervened. So the subsidy in the fuel case was not direct. It was an indirect subsidy by suspending the taxes. And we had agreed, but by the following year, in 2021, these taxes will be reinstated because it's revenue for our people. This government has only reinstated one tax, I think VAT, customs duty, they've actually amended the law to scrap off collection of taxes on fuel. So for every price that you see of fuel, actually we are literally being double taxed. First, we are supposed to have an income of customs duty, 25%, but they made an amendment to the law, and customs duty has been abolished from fuel products. That's also a form of subsidy, except that they do not want to say it, because this is established income for the last 57, 8 years. But now you are removing it. It's a form of subsidy that they have embarked on. Cooking oil, well, there's been a huge debate around cooking oil. First, we are promoting agriculture. We are promoting the growth of soybean, farming of soybeans. And you have noted that soybeans has escalated from near zero to one of the major producers of soybeans in Southern Africa. But one of the factors that should promote the growth of soybean is the issue of importing edible oils. Cooking oil is far cheaper when you import it from China, Lebanon, Dubai. It's far, far cheaper than the one we produce locally. Because the production factors, Honorable Noel Nkhoma is an economist, he knows these issues, are quite high in Zambia, whether it's the price of electricity, your price, your cost of labor, everything, transport, everything is very expensive. So there's been this on and off intervention. Government to put up a statutory instrument to ban these edible oils to benefit our farmers and to benefit the local industries. As soon as we do that, the local industry then jump the price of cooking oil, maybe from 8 kwacha, 750 liter, cooking oil, and it jumps sometimes to 80 kwacha in a short period. And again, government has a role to intervene in that economy, and they would allow certain imports, sometimes in quotas, sometimes awesome, so that the effect on our people is not substantive. So on cooking oil, I still stand with government. We have to promote the farming of soybeans in this country to benefit our people. We have to promote the manufacturing sector. Who then, manufacture cooking? It's far cheaper to import, but sometimes you have to do deliberate process to benefit your own economy. Honorable Noel Nkhoma talked about our debt, that we left a foreign debt. Again, this is a debate we should have. Our foreign debt was, I think, 12.9, $13 billion. If you look at all debt indices, whether it's South Africa, US, UK, they never include the local debt because it's in your local currency. You can buy treasury bills and clear it. There are many things you can even print money and pay it. He knows as an economist. All indices indicate the foreign debt. So our foreign debt is now about $14.2 billion. But of course, for politics, they exaggerate by including the local debt. Of course, we must pay that debt, which is local. And then they'll say we have a $20 or $30 billion debt. The reference to KK, 1990 and $7 billion, I agree with it. Zambians were afraid of debt because we had the huge debt of $7 billion in 1990. It was distressing us. We had no room to breathe. But our economy was very small. Our annual GDP was around $1 to $3.5 billion. It was such a small economy. It's like now, our GDP is around $26 billion. It's been hovering between 20 and 26 billion. Then you have a foreign debt of $50 billion. That debt will not be sustainable. We might be debt distressed, but we are not at the levels of 1990. If you compare the size of the economy and the size of the foreign debt we had, our debt was $7 billion. Our economy was extremely small, around $3 billion. You can check the statistics. Here we are. Our foreign debt is almost like 50% of our GDP. Yes, we are debt distressed, but we are not in comparison to the 1990 status. That time, that debt, the only reason we could get out was probably even the debt cancellation that we got through that HIPIC initiative. I think I've cleared the issues around.
Before we move on,
he can respond.
Please have your say, Mr. Nkhoma.
Thank you. Yeah.
Move to the next.
I'll quickly start from the issue of the debt. right? Now, it is not correct to state that with the debt crisis that we find ourselves in is really not an issue. Now, first of all, Ambassador Mwamba here knows the moment the PF government procured its first Eurobond, right, the alarm bells rang. Go to the archives, and I was one of them who warned, as far back as 2012, 2013, that we are now heading into a debt crisis because the economic fundamentals did not present any picture which was going to show that the country in the next maybe 10, 20 years had capacity to pay the debt, right? But what were called empty noises and so on and so forth. Now, the time when we had breached the international debt sustainability threshold of 40%, again, it was at a point that they procured the second Eurobond. They warned again that now you have busted the international debt sustainability threshold. But because of the appetite to contract debt, regardless of the consequences that will before the country, they went on and on and on. Right now, if you do a debt sustainability analysis, our debt to GDP should not be less than 70-80%. That I can challenge Ambassador. So that is recklessness at its best. That is recklessness at its best. First of all, if the debt was not deemed as a crisis under the PF administration, who declared a debt standstill? Who declared a debt standstill? It was not a UPND administration. We found a debt standstill, meaning that they reached a stage where they sat in cabinet and said, we have refused, we're not going to pay the debt. If my memory serves me right, it should have been towards the end of 2019 or 2020, right? Now, Zach, can you imagine? You go and borrow Kalova from your neighbor, and you know that your neighbor survives or on that same Kalova that he has lent to you. And you wake up one morning and say to your neighbor, I've refused, I'm not paying. Because all this time, I did not know that I was not going to have capacity to pay. So what we are saying is that our main preoccupation is to correct the distortions in the economy, right? The president was very clear that in the first year of his administration, the New Dawn administration was to stabilize the economy, right? Stabilize the economy. How we're going to stabilize the economy? Reach out to our creditors, begin to negotiate debt restructuring. And I think we can spend a little bit of time on this because the elephant in the room, the economic crisis that we find ourselves in right now, which Ambassador Mwamba has alluded to, is around the debt, right? Then, second year, we're going to begin to build on our economy. Consolidation, get FDI flowing again, get investor confidence going again. Most importantly, begin to unlock the rigidities in the economy. And I think as a New Dawn administration, just under or about 2 years in office, there's so much for our friends with a different political persuasion to be able to give us a part of the bag. For example, let me just give you at home level here what has happened. First of all, because of that same debt crisis that they created, which created the economic crisis back home, they accumulated pension arrears of almost 4 years plus, right? People retire, they couldn't be paid. Why? Because there was no money. Two, when they realized that there was a crisis around the pension payment fund, what did they do? They increased the retirement age from 55 to 65, hoping that the problem will resolve itself. Because they realized that there's no money to pay those pensioners. Two, most importantly, they went further and they immediately discontinued paying student bursaries. Right? Student bursaries, they're not being paid. Over and above that, the fertilizer program, the FISIP, the time that they were taking office, the price of a 50 kg bag of fertilizer was somewhere hovering around 50. I mean, about 200, 250. The time they were leaving, it was about 800, 900. Right? Those were signs that the economy of the country was failing. So when we are trying to, first of all, have a conversation around the state of the economy, let us deal with those issues that inform what you call the economy. So, having said that,
I can quickly respond.
Yeah, just quickly conclude.
Yeah, let me just conclude.
Mr. Nkhoma, yes.
Now, we reached a stage as a country that we could contract debt from anyone and anyhow. Any Shylock on the market who says I've got 500 million, we contracted debt. The debt that we're talking about, he talks about external debt to be that. No, the debt profile is not like that. It's public debt, right? Public debt. That's your debt profile. Even the 7 billion under UNIP, it included public. I mean, it was public debt, external and domestic. Then over and above that, I think as Zambians, we are being gullible. And why I say so? Have we interrogated how much contingent liability debt that this country is sitting on? Right? What we are looking at is the figures in terms of domestic debt and the external debt. Do you know that under the PF, contingent liability debt is sitting at another 4 billion? ZESCO alone, they signed sovereign guarantees, guaranteeing various loans to ZESCO. Right? In billions. Zambia, over almost 800 million. So, there are so many sovereign guarantees that were signed, more especially on state-owned enterprises, which, if consolidated, we'll be looking at another figure of $4 to $5 billion. Now, if you pack that together with the public debt, the debt sustainability threshold is neither here nor there because it will be closer to 100%. Now, how much reckless can one be in mismanaging an economy? Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Honorable Nkhoma.
Very brief, Ambassador,
Yeah.
so that we move forward.
It's very clear. You know, when you are running a country, you have a vision. What was Zambia's vision? First, that we should be a net exporter of power. You saw the investment, like just what he has alluded to, of ZESCO and the investment we've done in Kafue Gorge Lower, where we got a loan of $2.1 billion. It's deliberate. You want to be a net exporter of power, and you don't have sufficient power in the country. We found power at 1,600 megawatts, and it's now 3,500 megawatts. This government can export because of the investment that was done by the Patriotic Front, because we have excess. Our peak demand is at 2,300 megawatts, and we have 3,500 megawatt production that we do. So you have sufficient power to export. Load shedding should never be an issue after the investment that was done by the PF. Was that a good debt? It was a good debt, because it then has pyro effect on the economy, because you can have power and you can export. And like I've stated, we said we should be a net exporter, a power hub for the region, because there's power deficit all around us. With climate change and with the requirement of investment in power, it takes such a long time. But let me quickly agree with Honorable Noel Nkhoma. I didn't say we are not in debt crisis. I use the word debt distress in relation to the size of our economy. And I did the two comparison, how our debt in 1990 was totally unsustainable. This current debt is sustainable. In fact, it is under the Minister of Finance, Honorable Margaret Mwanakatwe, together with IMF and World Bank, who did a debt sustainability initiative, which profiled how much we owed whoever we owed. It was publicly disclosed. It is that government that even employed Lazard, because then we recognize that our debt distress were to the levels of unsustainability. Development was suffering because your debt service bill was quite high. So we hired Lazard for reasons. They've hired the creditors committee under the IMF, where Lazard was going to help with restructuring the debt, even negotiating, even seeking forgiveness in some loans. With China, we are engaged in a bilateral negotiations, not throwing China to the creditors committee in the manner that they have. Honorable Noel Nkhoma has been very clear. From way back, he opposed the Eurobond, engaging of that Eurobond loan, and I agreed with him. But my point has been, we have to look to who instructed us to go to the markets. It was the IMF. 21 of us in Africa were picked to go to the markets. We had just graduated into the lower middle income. They said, your economy is strong enough that you have to let these highly indebted poor, we had a debt of, I think, $1 billion debt, and our economy was growing at 10%. From the table, you know, these Harvard boys, they said, you are good as an economy. We will no longer lend you this money. We are sending you to the markets. The first 12 countries, including Mauritius, Seychelles, Zambia, were taken to Eurobond. We didn't go to Eurobond on our own. It's IMF and World Bank that sent us there. We were comfortable with borrowing concessional loans from IMF and World Bank. It is IMF who told us that your statistics are looking good, your growth rate is very good, you can afford to borrow from the market.
Did we have the liberty to refuse?
Like IMF here, they're in a straight jacket as we come to discuss the IMF. They're in a straight jacket. If they tell you your loans are not available because you are a low middle income country, you are a rich man now. So you can't come to NatSave. You only are Kwabsa. Kwabsa, I think you call in our Standard Bank. Tetuise kuno NatSave or a smaller bank. You see what I mean? They sent that to the market. So they should take the blame. The so-called reckless borrowing arose from that decision because ministers of finance in Africa were given liberty wherever finance was available. If it was Eurobond takes it has a rigid structure. China can issue you, Exim Bank can issue you with a loan. We had an infrastructure development to pursue. This country didn't have infrastructure built for the last 40 years other than the one that was done by Dr. Kaunda. President Michael Sata said we should have every road to every province. We should increase our power status. We should develop this country. And there was these monies available to China and to Eurobond. Again, I emphasize, we didn't go to the market on our own. We were shepherded there by IMF and World Bank. On pension arrears, I would like to differ with Honorable Noel Nkhoma. The details are public. By 2014, under the Public Pension Service Fund, we had 14,000 unpaid pensioners. When they were taking over in 2021, they only found 2,000 unpaid pensioners, 2,000 out of a number of 14,000 unpaid pensioners. 2,000 only. That's the one they had to clear. Even in that budget that was done by Honorable Walyanga and we had provided for, it wasn't even their issue. We were clearing the pensioners. Our people will remember people marching to Honorable Given Lubinda's office to demand that we have not been paid as pensioners. You have seen the same people march to Honorable Mulambo Haimbe, to Vice President's office. The issues around pensioners is complex because we have people from Lima Bank, UBZ, from the 90s, those that went on voluntary separation because when the IMF came in the 90s, they said your civil service is bloated. So they said cut half the staff. Most of those people have not been paid. Matters have been in court. That's why they marched to Ministry of Justice. They just don't pick any ministry because they know that Ministry of Justice is somehow associated with their issues of court. Some lawyers have eaten this money. Where they are paid, there is a 35 million kwacha that was paid, and these law firms ate the money. You know, matters are in court, they are in public domain. So the issues of pensioners is complex. Even now when you go to Cabinet Office, Honorable Noel Nkhoma, pass through when you go to your office, you are likely going to find pensioners. But for the record, the ones under Public Service Pension Fund, who were our biggest headache, they were unpaid 14,000 by 2014. And this information is on the PSPF website. You can go there. By 2021, again, the information will inform you that only 2,000 were remaining. And in fact, it was 4,000 because the 2,000 in the 2021 budget were being cleared. So they were only left with 2,000. On student bursaries, again, we know we're trying to resolve this issue for life. First, we think that the student should pay back. The bursary was turned into a loan. The bursary is limited, but to afford many students across all universities and colleges, that bursary scheme was turned to a loan that then can afford more students, and those that have benefited from this education can pay back, for their brothers and sisters and their children to pay back. So there are current bottlenecks around that area, and I don't think it still remains perfect, because for every college student we need to afford them this loan, where they pay when they have a job, wherever they have a job in future. But the process started. The PF took that bullet, that can we turn these free bursaries into a loan scheme? And I think we just need to perfect the bottlenecks. There'll be populist decision where you say, give them these student allowances. Yeah, it benefits the student. The students will you let, but you have probably taken away a loan from other sets of students by doing that. So it has to be comprehensive. We have to repair the economy so that we can afford all these things than doing populist things. FISIP, I love the issue of FISIP because Honorable Noel Nkhoma and me, we've been tracking this. In the 1990s, the IMF came blazing, privatize, no subsidies. So we dropped our fuel prices, our food, fuel subsidies, food subsidies. Every subsidy was dropped, including agricultural subsidies. But by 2001, the statistics were not good. I think poverty levels had risen to 84%, and you cannot leave your people like that. Our rural community were vulnerable. So President Mwanawasa introduced the FISIP program, first under community development, as a scheme to empower. It was a poverty alleviation scheme. And he started with, I think, 20,000. The number kept on growing. By 2011, Mr. Sata found it at 500,000 small-scale and smallholder farmers who were being given. We turned it into a productive venture. The numbers were scaled up to 1.1 million because these peasant farmers, these smallholder farmers, were feeding our country. It was no longer a poverty alleviation program as earlier envisaged, where you are intervening as a social safety net. So the FISIP program now is envisioned as a production method in which to feed our country and feed the region. That's why the numbers have gone. The price of fertilizer, we cannot talk about that. It's the highest we've ever seen in this country. They are buying fertilizer at $1,400 a ton. We were buying as government at $900 a ton. The corruption around the fertilizer issue, it probably will require an on program. So we are not doing well on the FISIP program. We don't know what to do with it because the IMF, as we come to the IMF, have clearly said, drop subsidies on fuel, on agriculture, and on any other subsidies. And they are struggling how they will reform this issue. But it has become a corrupt window for the New Dawn government.
Let me at this point get to
just
why
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Just to respond quickly. 3 minutes.
Right.
Just to two matters. One, I think for Ambassador Mwamba to allude that there is corruption around fertilizer, I do not agree. And why don't I agree is the fact that for the first time in so many years, we as a New Dawn administration, we are domesticating the supply of fertilizer by promoting local or domestic capacity. The president has been very clear that within the next maybe 1 or 2 seasons, there will be no more imports. The corruption around the issues that he's talking about in the fertilizer, it started with the killing of the nitrogen chemicals of Zambia, right? Now, who killed national nitrogen chemicals of Zambia? The archives are there for them to see. But the president has now directed that maybe this could be the last window for what you call complemented supply, basically imported and local, as we build up capacity domestically. And I can tell my brother here that if he wishes us to have that debate at another time, I'll be able to give him the headways that have been made to capacitate domestic producers of fertilizer, support them to the extent that it will bring the price down and deal with this issue of corruption. Indeed, Emmanuel Mwamba, ambassador, and myself, we have, I think, been on the same wavelength. Corruption is a cancer, and we have to fight it, regardless of whether it's corruption in the PF, whether it's corruption in UPND. But where it shows its ugly head, we have to fight it. And I think that is a quick response. Then the second one, on the issue of what you call pension arrears. Again, I do not agree in the sense that the backlog was for 4 years. Now, if you do a quick permutation, 4 years backlog, which we inherited at the time of assuming office, it cannot be 2,000 pensioners. It should be more. So to me, that backlog has now been reduced to, I think, 3 to 6 months now in terms of waiting time. So I think I've known that Ambassador Mwamba is very quick to acknowledge where progress has been made. And he will be open about it to say, yes, there you have done well. So I think Ambassador Mwamba, on that one, we deserve a pat on the back. Then I think I will probably also just conclude by, on the student bursaries, we reintroduced it because we believe that education is an investment. It may have appeared costly to the PF administration, but we believe that it is a very important investment which we cannot quantify in monetary terms. That is why the president, as he promised, he has been able to introduce it.
How do you plan to sustain it?
It will be sustained because, first of all, we know that this country is not poor. It's only that we have mismanaged ourselves. So what we want is, we want to have a better approach to managing our resources. We have got so much wealth as a country. We have got gold, we have got Switzerland, we have got copper, we have got cobalt, name it. But what we are saying is that in this new dawn administration, a methodical approach as it is, we want to ensure that all these resources are harnessed to benefit the common citizen. Thank you.
Let's move to the issue of debt restructuring. I would like us to be very quick. Why is it that it's taken so long, okay, to get to this debt restructuring? Because definitely it has a bearing on how we move forward economically. What are the bottlenecks? Let me start with Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba.
Yes, I'm glad because this is what brought us together.
Right.
Honorable Noel Nkhoma called for this very reason. I cautioned when I came on one of the programs when we had the staff level agreement signed and announced. I think that was 6th December, right. 2021, and the UPND were boasting that we've got this bailout that the PF failed to get for 5 years. And I cautioned. I said the problem with the IMF is that they change goalposts. And even when you regard them as friendly, they change goalposts. We were at the verge of getting this agreement with the IMF in 2020. Cabinet minutes are there to demonstrate. Honorable Wadyangandu brought all the issues were agreed, except on 3 issues. One, to do with removal of subsidies on fuel, on agriculture, and making ZESCO cost-reflective tariffs. Yeah. So they said, and we had reasons. For fuel, we're in COVID crisis, and we thought that the removal of taxes couldn't just be reimposed immediately. Besides, there was no direct subsidy to fuel. There has been some form of subsidy, for example, for the uniform pricing. Because if you're in Lundazi or Mongu, you still get petrol per litre at the same price. So there's that subsidy that goes there. But for direct subsidy, there was none. On ZESCO, government had insisted that first they needed to do a cost of service study to understand how much does it cost us to produce. We just can't say cost-reflective tariffs, and that study was not done. And on agriculture, there we couldn't compromise because we said this is not only alleviating poverty in the rural areas, we cannot remove these subsidies on FISIP because it's literally feeding us. We have bumper harvest, we are even exporting. It's a productive venture. So we didn't clinch it. The UPND came and agreed on the bottlenecks that we had refused. And you can see the announcement that was done in the staff level agreement, the statement that was done on 6th December 2021. But I said, it's not automatic that they'll give you the money immediately. Honorable Stumbeko Musokotwane said, by April, I think there was even a factor of that $1.3 billion in the 2021-2022 budget. Came April, new issues came, that there was issue of debt service that needed to be done. Remember, Honorable Walyangandu had suspended debt service, and even that default didn't happen in isolation, and I'm glad I'm with an economist here. There is a G20 framework which recognized that we are under COVID and countries were impacted negatively. So the framework provided for you to apply and suspend that debt. The default was approved. And there are 48 countries currently who are not paying their debt service, including Zambia. 48 countries. And the initiative is coming to an end in 2023. Hence the apprehension by the IMF. They want, when World Bank IMF gives you money, you have to pay back. But at the moment, there's debt service suspension. We have not resolved our issues with our creditors, whether they are suspending, for example, the Eurobond. We have a bullet point payment, 750 million that was due last year. We haven't paid it. We have another bullet payment that is coming in 2024. What are you doing with those things? IMF is interested. So they brought this new issue. We can't give you this money until you resolve your debt. There was an issue of China. China, like I stated under PF, we were negotiating with them bilaterally. Lazard was dealing with Eurobond and other creditors, other commercial creditors and banks. But China was being negotiated with us bilaterally. IMF conditions said, no, all debt treatment should be the same. All the creditors should be on board. I think there were comprehensive efforts that were done, and China came on board. And they became co-chair with France. France is representing Paris Club and other creditors, and China came as co-chair. Come September, because it was postponed when the IMF board sat in, executive board sat in April, they didn't approve the IMF, this bailout, because we hadn't resolved the issue of debt. Come September 2022, lucky enough they approved. But still more, the disbursement couldn't be done. They said resolve your debt issue. And that's where now I have been saying, we know what the issues is. Our largest single creditor is China. We owe them about $6.6 billion. And the other creditors. Why doesn't Zambia, why doesn't His Excellency the President Hakainde Hichilema, heighten his engagement with China? And China has demonstrated in the past that they can write off debt. They built Tazara at $465 million. It's now in billions. We've never paid a single way. China has built most of the facilities we've had. Before we went into this project finance between 2011 and 2021, we have a good relationship with China. Why doesn't the president engage them over this issue? Because now it's a bottleneck between the bailout that they are relying on. So we agree. We have a foreign debt crisis. We have high cost of living crisis. We have literally no money in the economy. The economy is on standstill. The solutions they are proposing is what we have been disagreeing with. They hope that the IMF will resolve these issues. They hope that foreign direct investment will resolve issues. So we've been saying, maybe let's begin to look inward. Honorable Noel Nkhoma referred to the gold. Well, there's an outbreak of gold everywhere. There's actually just looting of our gold. You know, the PF initiated an issue with ZCCMIH where they said we are going not just to be putting our foreign reserves in Switzerland. This $3 billion sits in foreign banks. We are going to build it with gold reserves. And by the time the PF were leaving, they had left gold reserves of $68 million. I don't know if our colleagues have continued with that. So this CMIH will buy to this artisanal mining. It's processed in gold bullions and you sell it to Bank of Zambia. And we had left reserves of $68 million gold reserves under Bank of Zambia. Those are initiatives to support. We think we should look inward. We have Sugilite, we have copper. We think that we shouldn't be giving unnecessary incentives to the mines. They've given them tax holidays. tax incentives, all manners of incentives. We think that, for example, the crisis at Mopani and KCM is a great opportunity for this country to come out of this crisis. Between the two mines, those are the largest mines, literally some of the largest mines in Africa, and they're in government hands. They think that they should get an equity partner from abroad. We think that they can run them. And between the two mines, literally you can jumpstart this economy with the current price of copper. They believe an investor should come from Canada, from South Africa, to come and then take up equity. They've hired, their liquidators and managers. They've hired these consultants, Rothschild on one hand, and Rand Merchant Bank for KCM and Mopani. And these guys we're looking at our books, history, and they've gone out to scout for buyers for these mines. We differ with that approach. So we agree on the economic crisis. We have a crisis, but it's the solutions we are differing on.
So these sounds to be alternatives, Mr. Noel Nkhoma, that the opposition are basically saying, let's not take this route, let's take this route instead. Do you agree with these alternatives? Are they workable? If not, what are you doing as a party in government in order to alleviate all these problems?
Okay, thank you. Let me just start by responding to one or two issues which my brother has talked about,
right,
which I think require a response.
Right.
The first one is how do we find ourselves in this debt crisis? And I will say it, right, that first of all, I do not agree that the debt suspension was more or less imposed on us. No, it was voluntary, because every country is a sovereign entity, and they decide how they want to manage their own affairs. So the debt suspension or debt standstill was a voluntary response by the Zambian government, and I'll tell you why. First of all, when we raised alarm bells around these Eurobonds, you can go to Minister of Finance, the budget speech is there, where the Minister of Finance at the time said that for the first Eurobond, which is I think $750 million,
yes, 750.
By the time it matures, we are creating a sinking fund. We would have accumulated sufficient money to be able to liquidate the Eurobonds going forward. Now the question is, Ambassador Mwamba is here, and Ambassador Mwamba, one thing I give him credit for, he is a researcher. He reads researchers. Can he tell us how much money was accumulated in this sinking fund, and we leading to the extent that we could not liquidate even the first Eurobond ticket of $750 million. Then number two, engagement with China. There is engagement with China. The Minister of Foreign Affairs has been to China. Various cabinet ministers have been to China. And I know for a fact that the Secretary to the Treasury a week or two ago was in China, again engaging with our Chinese partners. But I think also we will be, I think, misleading the public to suggest or push a narrative that the new Dawn administration is alienating China. It's not true. I know at a very high level, engagements are taking place. The president and his counterpart have spoken on phone, and I'd like to believe that they are still speaking. Now, coming to the issue of Mopani copper mines and KCM, Ambassador Mwamba is suggesting that these two are the game changers for the Zambian economy, and we seem not to have solutions around them. But if with them, they're looking at it from an angle where they think that this should be domestically owned. First of all, who created the mess at Mopani copper mines? Who created the mess at KCM? It was under the PF administration. When the MMD was handing over to the PF administration, these mines were thriving mines. They were paying suppliers. They were employing Zambians. They were exporting. They were contributing to the foreign exchange reserves. So the mess that these mines find themselves in, which this government is having sleepless nights to try and unlock, was a creation of our brothers in PF. But over and above it, to say that we can run these mines, we have been in that road before. ZCCM, 100% Zambian owned. What happened? We had no capacity to sustain the operations of these mines. Why? Two reasons. We lacked capital. Mind you, these are highly capital-intensive operations. You can have a good management team in place with the best engineers probably. We have the best engineers in mining. We have the best trained mining economists, but without capital, you are as good as dead upon arrival. So what this government is trying to do is to attract the requisite capital, recapitalize these mines, and let these mines thrive again. Now, I think the issue in terms of after signing, the IMF program, getting on the IMF program,
right.
I can say here that there is some inflows that have started coming, and I know that there was an 185 million, 188 million dollars which came through. But I think to me, they are what you call extremely complex structural issues about debt negotiations, because Ambassador Mwamba knows very well that there is also a component of individual investors, right, who make up that 3 billion Eurobond, right, and to get an agreement which basically covers the expectations of those people who make up that 3 billion, besides the other multilateral and bilateral lenders, is a matter which requires, right, diligence and a reachable time. Because at the end of it all, we have demonstrated, as the new Dawn administration, our goodwill and intent to resolve this debt. But again, we cannot dictate our terms on those who lend us money. Because mind you, they lend us money on their own terms. Because we are the beggars, we are the borrowers. So the lenders lend us on their own terms. And it's a question of their expectations and our expectations being able to meet at some point.
Mm-hmm. So are these like fuel subsidies, the fact that we've removed fuel subsidies and then ZESCO reflective tariffs, are these conditionalities of their...
Well, you can call them conditionalities, but I think we should be honest about it. The fact that if we want help, we must be able to more or less accommodate what those people who are going to give us that help are expecting from us. We cannot continue to play strong and hard or push hardball when we know that we're in a dire situation.
But also, Mr. Mwamba, I mean, be honest. I mean, let's be honest, yes or no. I mean, you, in 2020, you were almost striking a deal with IMF, like you earlier said. I mean, it's only the fact that you refused based on the fact of the conditions, like you needed to remove subsidies and you needed to have ZESCO reflective tariffs. The thing here is that your refusal was more political interest because you knew a year after that
there was an election coming.
So you could not obviously subject your citizens who are supposed to give you a vote. So yours was basically to suspend it. Otherwise, should you have won election, you were definitely going to agree. You could have put us in the same route that the UPND is taking.
Yeah, when I was coming, there was a story, I think you must have heard it on BBC, where the Sri Lankan Prime Minister, they've been in similar conditions like us, Chad and Ethiopia, right. And they also signed some IMF bailout. And he was bemoaning, look, I've removed taxes on fuel. I mean, fuel is now expensive. I have increased the cost of the tariffs for electricity, but IMF is still not giving me the money. It's like now they've changed goalpost, and he was bemoaning, and I said, wow, this is a similar story to Zambia. But let me just, before I bring my new thoughts, let me just respond again to Mopani and KCM. The two were unique. KCM, the investor, had accumulated arrears for suppliers $200 million. Had not brought the $1.5 billion, he kept on singing for almost 20 years. Remember, under KCM, we have one of the largest mine that should be developed, the Konkola deep mining. And he literally had scraped off, devalued the assets of the mine. He was borrowing heavily against the assets of the mine. And now they were just bringing concentrates across to smelt in Chingola. There were serious issues around around KCM, that government had to intervene. The contractor, I think, owed Zesco, is it $50 million? Contractors and suppliers, $200 million. There were clear issues and our people were suffering. And government intervened, revoked this relationship with Vedanta. For Mopani, it's totally different. Glencore had made a decision. There were investigations coming heavily on them. They decided to move out of mining. So Zambia was not the only ones affected. I think there was Namibia, Australia, and Zambia. They were booking out. And then there was this negotiation under which then we bought the mine back. I've written about this. I've not agreed that we should have bought the mines at $1.5 billion. I've said that that price is extremely colossal, because these are mines these people were getting for $200 million and below. How would they sell it back to us at $1.5 billion? So Mopani was not our issue. Glencore was supposed to close it, look for a buyer, and put it on care and maintenance for a period of 3 to 5 years. Which government would allow that its people should be sent in the streets? ZCCMIH was profitable. But we know UNIP turned it into a cash cow. They were an ATM. Like Honorable Noel Nkhoma has stated, they had good engineers, good administrators, good managers. But where was the failing? All the proceeds first were taken to develop the country. Unfair to the core assets. You know, in Kokoya money, you deprive it of feedstock. So we literally ran down the CMI. But the model under which was run was very well. If government can keep its hands off and allow the mines to be run professionally, and they do not milk it from capital finance and from operation finance and from investment finance, we can run those mines. I still hold it to that. I agree the sinking fund is an issue that didn't turn out well. When we got the first Eurobond in 2012, if we had begun to accumulate even just $5 million a year or $10 million a year, we'll have had enough savings by 2021. So this became just political rhetoric, but this is something that we should have implemented, because we had to make ourselves debt sustainable. And we know the inefficiencies around ZRA. We're among the lowest in relation to our GDP who are collecting our taxes. We have a lot of people, our people who are outside the tax brackets. And then you have ZRA just feeding on our workers, because those are formal, you know how to trace them, and you force employers to remit that pay as you earn. That should not be. We are a 20 million people nation. There should be more people to pay taxes. We can look at the initiatives that was done by John Pombe Magufuli. He jumped the tax collections. He introduced using mobile phones. Whoever had the number, you put their national identity to it and the PIN number, and automatically taxes were being collected from there. ZRA has to think outside the box. There's a lot of money in this economy. Engagement with China. I'm glad to hear that the ministers have been there, that people from our treasury have been there, and that the president has spoken with the Chinese counterpart. Those are good. That's why I use the term the president and his government should heighten their engagement. So far, it doesn't look good. With the two statements that have come from China, it doesn't look good, because we had two visitors, high-level visitors, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Madam Janet Yellen, at State House. She says China is standing in the way of the IMF bailout because they're refusing to cooperate. And the matter again was repeated by the IMF Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva. She also blamed the lack of progress with the IMF program on China. And that was not good. You should not allow these foreigners to come and badmouth another partner. We should have first of all issued a very strong statement against, to rebuke them against those statements that they had issued. Our relationship with China is separate from our relationship with the US. You know, when we are condemning this LGBT issue, people accuse me that I'm not siding with the US. I've always stated that, in fact, the US is our biggest bilateral partner. They give us $500 million a year for most of our health programs and some to our agricultural programs. But China equally is so important historically, and what they've done, especially with our investment. Our duty is to balance those relationships. So I thought I could answer to those issues.
So my question.
What is your question?
Your decision not to go ahead with the IMF
was political. No. It wasn't political. We were under COVID crisis. The economy was in distress. It was at negative 3.5. And imagine if you remove fuel subsidies, agricultural subsidies, you remove all these subsidies that they didn't want us to implement. And remember, Honorable Wariangando, I think even Honorable Margaret Monagatu, had done a lot to satisfy the conditions of the IMF. First of all, we stopped all projects that were below 80%. That was to the detriment of our campaigns. Because we need people on the jobs, we need people on sites. We stopped projects, and there were many across the country. 80% and below were stopped. Those in the pipelines, the money like Honorable Noel Nkhoma talked about, we stopped all piped finance that was coming. We stopped it because we said after the debt stress that was done, analysis, it demonstrated that we were leveraging to a huge debt crisis because we're in debt distress. So there were sacrifices done by government. So to come on top of that and agree that Mwalalunda fuel, Mwala Fumiakwe Finefi, the country was going to implode. And sometimes I speak against the IMF, although the PF pursued it. I personally have other ideas. I think that we should heighten domestic revenue. This country has money. In fact, Honorable Noel Nkhoma was in a discussion when I was High Commissioner in South Africa, where the European Investment Bank had convened IMF and others, and they had called us as ambassadors. So they were giving examples about countries. And when they came to Zambia, this expert, he was a Ghanaian, he said we're a good country. Our economy is far bigger than how we portray it. The trouble is we have now an informal economy where ZRA doesn't get its money. And he felt that our economy from his visit, because he had visited earlier with other technocrats, was in the range of $50 to $60 billion. And he joked, because he didn't know the ambassador is from Zambia is there. He joked, he said, but the trouble with African countries, they like to understate their economy so that they can access first cheap financing. And then they can be, like poor countries, they can attract pity and pitiful money. So that the World Bank is here, IMF is here, the cooperating partners. But it demonstrated that the resilience of our economy was far bigger than we officially portrayed it. I remember sharing this with Honorable Felix Mtachi, who would tell you he was Minister of Finance at the time. So this economy is big. We have to think outside the box. We have to, another matter I criticize, and I hope he answers, is this routine way of doing things. President Hakainde Hichilema has won an election. He has a manifesto. But nothing has changed from the PF and the UPND. You know why? Because the economic model we pursue, first we have these national development plans, now we are in the 8th one, then we have this medium-term expenditure plans where you budget for the next 3 years. There's nothing outside fundamental which we should reform our economy. We don't respond to the crisis we have in the country. We have routine. In fact, the managers of these economies, I can dare you, are the same one under Rupia Banda, under Michael Sata, under Edgar Lungu, and under Hakainde Hichilema. He might have his own brilliant ideas, but Kariaria is the same. Secretary to Treasury is the same. Minister of Finance, they are the same. They will not think what we are proposing, what I personally propose. We have to go outside these brackets. There should be a way in which we can develop this country.
Let me quickly move our conversation to the elephant in the room. I mean, it is the Lusaka-Ndola dual carriageway. And I know that this is coming on under the public-private partnership, which of course we know that it's been existent for quite a long time. And I think Mr. Noel Nkhoma, you sit on the Public-Private Partnership Council. This model is a brilliant model. Public-private partnership, we all agree, is a brilliant model. Let's first of all give it a bit of history. Do we have successful projects in Zambia that are falling under the public-private partnerships and are a success? And we will then move to the Ndola Lusaka dual carriageway, why we are applying this model.
Okay, thank you, Zach. And I think it's a good start.
Right.
But I think to be able to make sense in our conversation around PPPs,
yes,
I think let's break it down so that the listeners out there who may not have the knowledge that the three of us have in this room can also understand what is a PPP. Right?
Right.
Now, the public-private partnership, or Triple P, is the pooling of resources between the public, and the public represented by government on one hand, the private, who is a private investor, right, with a view to create what you call a partnership. Just maybe at a macro level, let me just maybe give a quick example.
Right.
Ambassador Mwamba here has just retired from foreign service. He may have gotten a bounty gratuity. Then he finds that I've got a little shopping mall which has been run down, or a shopping complex in, let's say, Counter Square.
Right.
And I realize that the rentals that I'm getting from that little shopping complex I have there do not reflect the economic realities, because the rental income is supposed to be higher than what it is. Then I approach Ambassador Mwamba. I said, Ambassador Mwamba, can you and I partner, assuming that I'm the one who owns the asset. I'm public.
Right.
He's a private investor. He's looking for opportunities to invest his gratuity or pension. Then we say, okay, for this kind of arrangement, what needs to be done for the rentals to move from, let's say, 1,000 to 10,000 per unit? Then we say, okay, there are 5 units. We need to put tiles. We need to put a new roof, paint it, put in new kind of things that will make it appreciate in value. Then he says, for this, I will have a share of the rentals for the next, let's say, 10 years. The 5 years will be to cover my investment. I'll put in 1 million kwacha, and I will appoint a contractor. Right? I'll appoint a contractor who will basically be paid by me to make sure that we do a good job. That's a partnership. That at a basic level, that is a public-private partnership. I'm giving my asset, which is the property, and Emmanuel Mwamba is putting in his investment, which is cash. And we create that high-value property. Then he says to me, I'll be getting, because I'm the one who has put in my money, I'll be getting 70% of the rental income until 10 years. Right? It's part of 10 years. You'll be getting 30%. If the rental appreciates in terms of income over the years, because rental, the capital gains in this country are quite high. If we increase the rentals after 3 years, then the index will change. You will now move to 40, I will be at 60 and so on. That is basically the public-private partnership. And in this case, your government, our government, the government Republic of Zambia, is inviting private investors. Government has got assets which are non-performing, right? They are in a state which basically does not speak to economic value. They are not delivering economic value. Can you partner with government to be able to resuscitate these assets? Now, the elephant in the room is the Lusaka-Ndola. Right. Now, the question was, have there been such successful PPPs before? The first PPP, right?
No.
In Zambia was in the colonial time. The rail line, which was built going Livingstone, Zimbabwe.
Yes.
That was a PPP. It was not funded by the federal government. It was funded by the private investors who saw value in terms of having that rail line. It could have been for the transportation of minerals or traffic, whatever.
Right.
But let's come to Zambia. Do you know that the concession which was recently handed over, I think it was last week, the Kasumbalesa border concession,
right,
was a PPP signed 2 towards the end of the MMD administration, right?
Right.
A highly lucrative PPP. It was, I think, for 15 years or so, but I know along the way, the PF administration cancelled or terminated that concession, believing that it was wrongly procured. But after 2 years, they had to reset it because the governance structures in terms of the concession agreement was so strong that it protected the investor. What happened because of that same cancellation? It has costed this government, our government, about $80 million, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of a claim for disrupting a concession. ZESCO has entered into so many PPPs. This at Emphas, the two what you call solar plants there.
Yes.
I think those are PPPs.
Ngonya and Bangweolu.
Exactly. Those are PPPs. Right? Recently, we have signed the Chingola-Kasumbalesa expanded road. It's a PPP. Right? It's a PPP. We have also signed another concession, which is Zambia now, under PPP, to build a new town in Kalumbila. A new town with housing, with the hospitals, with the shopping malls, police, and everything, every services, with a Zambian, let me just give you the name, with a Zambian consortium, which is styled Trans Engineering Construction Limited, Trans Engineering Road Construction Limited, to the tune of $52 million. We are soon going for a groundbreaking. So they are married of success.
Chingola-Thursday Road.
So it's Kalumbila. Kalumbila.
Yes.
Yes, that's a PPP. So to many Zambians, they may not know. Ambassador Mwamba come from before I went to Ethiopia, was in South Africa. He can tell you here that most of the major trunk roads in South Africa are PPPs. They are working, right? They are working. Why? Is because the private sector, that is their space. Business is their space. And I can tell you, on those roads which are under PPP in South Africa, rarely or hardly do you find a pothole not repaired within 48 hours, right? The roads are in good, perfect, and motorable condition. Recently, in Zimbabwe here, President Mnangagwa, their government has done a PPP from Bet Bridge into Harare. Those who have driven on that road, a beautiful delivery, right? By a PPP consortium, right? This is a new, this has been there for many years. But usually countries adopt this kind of financing agreement when they have what you call a resource constraint, or a constraint in their resource envelope, so to speak. So President Hakainde in the Ichilema's Junior administration was very clear when we were campaigning that those roads which are of economic or commercial value, we shall opt through a PPP model. And that is exactly what is happening now.
And I meant to also believe that even under the Patriotic Front, I think I meant to say that the Chingola-Thursday Road is a PPP model, which was signed under the Patriotic Front. Yes. And the concession is 30 years, I believe.
Yes.
15.
But the Chingola-Thursday Road, I think, Zach, you've done well. Do you know that even under...
Not Chingola, I was talking about the Kitwe Chingola Joe Carriageway. I think there's NAPSA involved, but we have to explain the mechanisms there.
Yeah, now, the Lusaka-Ndola Joe Carriageway, do you know that there was an attempt under PF to go the PPP route? There was an attempt. And
do you agree, Mr.
Yes, there was an advert in 2015
yes, there was an
where we called for PPPs for all the major road projects.
Exactly.
I will come and answer. Let him just finish.
Yes. Now let me say it. Now, the question that we should be asking ourselves is that why didn't that succeed? Right? Why did that succeed? And instead, they opted to go for traditional procurement, which is called by engineers EPC, at 1,245 million. And I can tell you that because there was no opportunity for personal benefit by those people who were tasked with that responsibility to ensure that that transaction is actualized. Because if you ask yourself, why were we rushing to procure these loans on major roads which could finance themselves? Because as we are speaking now, people are paying toll-fees on the Chisamba, they're going to Kobabel, they're paying toll-fees, right? They are paying toll-fees up to now. Those are the toll-fees which are basically supposed to finance the roads. But if we say that people are paying toll-fees, is the road in a motorable condition? No, it's not. So maybe I can allow my brother here to
Thank you very much. At least he has cleared. I don't have to explain what a PPP is. And the various examples demonstrate that we've had PPPs from colonial times. Yeah. No one is against PPPs. I can just add.
That said,
yeah,
you know where I want it to be because of time. If we agree that, you know, PPPs are good models on infrastructure, I mean, it's been seen even in the region. What are the issues? What is the bone of contention in this Ndola Lusaka dual carriageway? Yeah.
Okay, let me just answer just a brief what he raised, then I go to the meat of the issue.
Right.
You are right. ZESCO, in partnership with Tata, we have Iteji Power Company. ZESCO, in partnership with Kafue Gojlo, with Sino, Hydro, that's a clear partnership, public-private partnership to develop that. NAPSA itself, NAPSA has gone into arrangements, into investments, into partnerships. They have shopping malls, they have the bus terminus in Livingstone. They have the brand new one of the best hotels in Southern Africa, Radisson Mosotunia. That's NAPSA investment partnering with Radisson Blue and the contractor. Now, where is our issue with? Well, first, let me speak to the 1.2 billion, because this we have to repeat. It was $1.2 billion in 2017 for one reason. There were extra issues they wanted to do. The issues of 2 industrial cities at Chivombo and Masaiti. The issue of a 5-story building in Ibex Hill for RRD as its head office. The 160 kilometers township roads in Kabwe, Kapirimposhi, Ndola, and Luansha. Turning the Luansha, Fisenge, Masangano into a dual carriageway. Those were the extras. By 2019, Cabinet sat, after that earlier report we talked about, where we were found to be debt distress after this analysis, where we scaled down projects that were 80% and below and cancelled those on the pipeline. This particular project, we said it was very important because it's a development road. It's an economic road for this country, and it's one of the busiest. So we said you have to turn it into a PPP. So it was already moved from the loan portfolio into a PPP. So China Jiangxi, we're going to then secure this financing. And the amount, it's very important, dropped from $1.2 billion to $700 million as at 2019. But of course, for the politics, people kept on repeating that PF wanted to procure it at $1.2 billion. The intention never was the actual reality. It came down to $700 million. There's been general accusation that PF were driven to do all these infrastructure development because of corruption. Valeriamo, that's a speak by our politicians. First of all, these were project financing. A contractor goes to China to Exim Bank. With your government, you provide these guarantees, and then you are given. So, unless we are accusing that the process is corrupt, but we like just throwing all these accusations here and there. Coming back to the elephant in the room, we have opposed. First, like I opposed the area PPP that was announced. I don't know if you're part of it, the Western one, Western route.
Yeah, that has been cancelled.
Good. It's good that it's been cancelled. That's even better. That's big news. I oppose that one because the private partner in that partnership was an NGO And I served in South Africa. I knew the gentleman. He was of Zimbabwean national who settled in South Africa. And I said, he's first an NGO. He has no capacity to raise even $10 million or $1 million. How do you go with such an... where are your scrutiny processes? So, of course, it was thrown back to us that this process started under PF, but that was not an issue. For me, I raised the objection on the Western Route, where they wanted to spend $3.5 billion under PPP on the issue of the partner. The NGO, I knew its role, and it was outside its role. They are a trade advocacy. How can they now come and do your roads? So that's how and I'm glad to hear that report that's been rejected, and I think this is after thorough scrutiny, and our concerns have been found correct. On this particular road, I have said it's masquerading as a public-private partnership, and I've said it's not a PPP, for one reason, is that you want to go into this arrangement, but you want to raid the treasury, NAPSA money, and Workers' Compensation Fund money. And I've proposed a solution. If the issue is to use our local financing, for whatever reasons that we want to use our local financing, then let NAPSA do a 10-key project instead of a PP project. Because between them, from their own information, the minister's statement in Parliament, on his Facebook page, at signing ceremony by all the ministers, it is clear that Workers' Compensation Fund Board and NAPSA will play a role. And the financing from the books and documents we are seeing is that they will raise up to $400 million. The road is about $600 million. So we are saying then do not a PPP, do a 10-key project, give it to these people. They will hire a contractor they can even hire the same consortium, this same microfinance, who can then deliver this road in 2 years to NAPSA. They can hire NRIFA, who they are partnering already to collect some of the investment that they did in the road. NRIFA can collect the tolls. This will benefit our country. It will bring resources to our public pension fund. So our concern is on the structure of this so-called PPP.
Sorry to cut you short. Not to cut you short. Don't you think that is a model that seems to have already failed, especially that, the National Road Fund are the ones that are already collecting toll fees? I mean, why do we have such a road? You're basically saying we go the route that we have always been, which has put us in a situation we are. The road is bad and toll fees are being...
First, let's not debate. There's a need for this road. That's why it has been under procurement from 2017, as demonstrated by our conversation. It is in a crisis. It's actually a death trap in certain parts. There's no debate. The debate is the solutions. On the structure we are criticizing is that in a public-private partnership, government has provided the roads to build. The role of the private partner is to go and look for financing for this road. Now they want to go to another public entity. These are institutions created by acts of parliament. We know they can invest, and they have public money because they have your pension and my pension. We have to be... I've been repeating, why are you speaking to NAPSA and Workers' Compensation Fund Board through the Chinese consortium? Government can speak to them directly. A proper PPP is as explained. We went into a partnership with Tata on Itesh Power. Tata brought in the finance, and from the revenue that ZESCO is making, is paying Tata over a long period of a special purpose vehicle for that role. On all PPPs that you will see, the partner plays a role. Our concern is that if you want to raid the pension funds, why then don't you give the pension funds to do the road? They've done the hotels, they've done the roads, they've done the bus stops, and a similar arrangement. The private partner who they have gotten, the consortium of these 3 Chinese firms, and I've put it on record. The trouble is they cannot get money from China now until our frosty diplomatic relationship are resolved. And we have to agree that the relationship between Zambia and China will not be best. A second point I've raised is that these are state-owned enterprises in China They could be registered here locally as limited companies, but they are state-owned enterprises. Even their managing director, their boards are in China. These are companies owned by the Chinese government. So if you have a frosty relationship, how will they go to, and China, you know the financing structure, Exim Bank and other financial institutions, there's a huge leverage by the Chinese government. How will these entities obtain a loan on their own and come and do the road? You know that this is difficult. So then you are sending them to NAPSA. You are sending them to a Workers' Compensation Fund Board. For us, we think that it should be relooked at. It should be a structure which is a win-win situation. Lastly, Honorable Noel Nkhoma, I know you're bending to answer.
I want to come in quickly before I lose thought.
Oh, okay, please, let me allow him to.
Let me. Thank you so much, and I'm happy that we are having this conversation. And I just want to educate my brother a little bit in terms of how this concession has been structured, right? And information is power. First of all...
Yeah, especially that you sat on the council. So before I blame you, at least acquit yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. First of all, this was a public tender, right? As what we mentioned before, it has taken us almost 1 year to arrive at this decision as a council. Right. Now, one of the things that you also have to understand is that when you are arriving at a decision of this magnitude, mind you, this is the biggest PPP concession in the history of Zambia. This is the biggest at the moment, right? Almost $649 million. There's what you call technical evaluation and on one side financial evaluation. Right. Now technical evaluation speaks to capacity, right? Do you have the right skill set? Do you have the right equipment? Have you ever done this kind of grandiose projects? Yes, and he has rightly put it, these are Chinese state-owned entities. Yes. You know, AVIC is, I think, the lead member of the consortium, China Railway, and so on and so forth. So in terms of technical capacity, there's no question about it. They've done huge projects, not only in Zambia, but across the world. Financial, there's no debate about it. These have got what you call a local balance sheet. A local balance sheet which talks to their net worth, right? Having Zambia, like what you have said, registered in Zambia. It's a company registered in Zambia. China Railway, operating in Zambia, is also registered in Zambia. They've got their own independent, standalone balance sheet, right? Which gives them the muscle to be able to pass the basic financial capacity test, right? What is the value of this concession? The value of this concession is $649 million. Broken down how? The concessionaire has put up upfront $270 million, right? Or their own equity contribution to the project. When they were negotiating with our GNT, what we call the government negotiating team, they had appetite to raise this fund outside Zambia, right? Right. Now, in our discussions as council, all right? Right. And when we say council, mind you, this is a council appointed by the president himself, right? Right. And on a quarterly basis, we report to the president in terms of the work that we're doing, where we're going, and so on. The president guided us to say he would like local participation. This is a very important project, and he wants Zambian entities who may have appetite to invest in a project of this sort to also be given an opportunity, right? If we had, with hindsight, probably should have taken it also to the Lusaka Stock Exchange, because this is a high-value, net-worthy project. That's when we said, no, this will create a strain on our foreign exchange reserves, because if this whole amount is financed from outside, which means there will be repatriation every now and then of dividends, right, to wherever they could have borrowed from. Do we have local capacity? We said to the concessionaire, we think that, look, also local, or like what Ambassador Mwamba used to borrow his term, let's look inward, right? Do we have appetite for this? And I can state it on record here, that the PPP Council does not impose who the financier will be. No. Because, mind you, this is a private party arrangement.
Right.
They have got the right to go to Ambassador Mwamba's bank and negotiate for financing towards this project. Right? Because to us, we want domestic retention of the profits. Because, for example, we are talking about NAPSA. Right? As far as I know, and as far as Castro knows, there's no agreement that has been signed with NAPSA. There's no agreement that has been signed with the workers' compensation. But we know that there has been a reach out to these institutions to be able to demonstrate if they've got appetite. Now, NAPSA is got what you call a board of trustees, right?
Right.
That board of trustees, they've got an investment committee, which will look at any single investment depending on what the investment guidelines dictate. Like what Ambassador Mabaraki said, NAPSA has invested so much money in our roads. One of them is the road that you talked about. What is the state of that road? If you go there now, does it reflect the kind of money that has gone there? Do you also know that one of the roads that basically was invested in is the Chingola-Solwezi road? Right now, there is a PPP concession on the Chingola-Solwezi road, notwithstanding that there was money which went in NAPSA money, which went into that road, to the extent that even the toll fees are assigned to NAPSA. But the question that I want Ambassador Mwamba, since he's very good at researching, can he also come back to this station and tell them how is that loan performing? Right? Because that's pensioners' money. If you talk about pensioners' money, that is pensioners' money. NAPSA money is pensioners' money. How is that loan performing? Then two, and most important, do you know that there is a Zambian concession company which was given to redo the Chingola-Solwezi road? And notwithstanding that they were given, it is almost 7 times they've asked to extension of time to achieve what you call financial closure. They can't. The Zambian concession. So, this Macro Ocean Consortium, they participated in the tender among 7 others, right? To keep out all these speculators and jokers, we changed the rules to say anyone putting in an expression of interest, you should back it with cash, right? So that if you fail to get the tender, you lose out. That's how we had only about 7, right?
Yes.
To the final evaluation, up to the technical committee, only to reach that threshold. And at that point, that's when we now arrived at Macro Ocean. Now, when Ambassador Mwamba tells us that NAPSA could have single-handedly done this project, he should also understand is that, first of all, this is a risk. Any project is a risk, right? Macro Ocean is taking the risk, right? And NAPSA is not a construction company, which basically can now begin to subcontract and do all those things that Ambassador Mwamba is talking about and manage this thing. No. The pension funds all over the world, including where Ambassador Mwamba served in South Africa, you have got the PIC, Public Investment Corporation.
Yes.
It's a pension fund, right?
Yes.
How do they invest? Don't they invest in the PPPs? They do invest in infrastructure projects.
Oh, yeah.
Do you agree, my brother?
I demonstrated that NAPSA. Can I quickly answer?
No, but let me just finish.
Okay, because I thought I could answer you comprehensively.
That you need pension funds to invest in infrastructure.
Oh, we laid out that at the beginning.
So what we are saying here, Zach, is that NAPSA will make its own informed decision whether this is an investment that they have got appetite for, like workers' compensation, right?
Yes.
But to demonstrate that the investor, the consortium, has got financial muscle, they have put up upfront 270 million from their own equity, not a loan, from their own equity, to start mobilizing and do the project. One thing that Zambians are not asking is that Ambassador Mwamba says that this same Lusaka-Ndola dual carriageway, cabinet sat and decided that they were going to suspend it, or what did you say, cancel it?
Or scaled it down. The scope was reduced now, from 1.2 billion to $700 million.
China shall see. Now, can you explain what happened to the $30 million that the PF government paid China Jasi as advance payment for this road. 30 million Zambian dollars was paid to China Jasi. Up to now, we have not recovered that money. This road, we are delivering it without paying a single dollar, single cent. But the same toll fees that you're currently collecting are going to finance this road. And what do Zambians want? Zambians don't want politics. Zambians want roads. There is a social impact benefit on this road. How many people have died? You and I, everyone here could have lost relatives on that road. Look at the traffic, the traffic stress on that road, to the extent that it now takes you anything between 5 to 7 hours to go to Ndola, with a dual carriageway, which basically gives you that benefit in terms of social impact. You should be able to go into Ndola in the morning and come back by lunch hour after having conducted your business. So what we're saying, Ambassador Mwamba, is that in a country which is debt distressed as it is, as a creation of the PF administration, we have no other option apart from, remember Ambassador Mwamba was saying that President Hakainde Hichilema is not doing anything new to be able to move away from the old traditional way of running government. This is a demonstration that the president is beginning to use innovative ways of unlocking this economy. So, really, to answer you, Ambassador Mwamba,
maybe let me quickly.
Is this not innovative?
Before Ambassador,
well, let me answer.
Ambassador Mwamba comes in. Look, the Zambian people right now are also trying to see how we or they will benefit, or their government will benefit from this road, because they are looking at 25 years. Toll fees will be collected. How much are they collecting currently? How much will they collect afterwards? And how will Zambians themselves benefit? Is this government going to benefit? Is there any revenue sharing ratios that you can bring out on the Ndola-Lusaka Road toll gates between the government and the concessionaire?
Yes. I gave an example of Kasubalesa. Kasubalesa, there is infrastructure that has been built. It was, I think, a 15-year concession, but interrupted. It was moved to 18 years. The concessionaire has walked away, right? Who has benefited? They have handed you over border infrastructure built by the concessionaire. Was just the concession has expired. Now, what are the benefits? I talked about social impact in terms of the quality of the road. There will be no pothole which will not be repaired within exceeding 48 hours. Over and above that, the Minister of Infrastructure, Honorable Charles Muluku, who happens to be the Vice Chairperson of the PPP Council of Ministers, by the way, it's chaired by the Minister of Finance, has demonstrated that at the end of the concession, the net gain to government in terms of revenue, this includes the revenue sharing, this includes the corporate tax, it comes to 1.3 billion.
1.1 billion.
1.1.
According to the speech by the minister.
Yeah, but just any additional whatever.
I've got 1.2 billion.
1.2.
Oh,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
1.2.
Yeah.
This is what is projected to accrue to...
Meaning this is the money that will...
Accrue to the Zambian government. Yes. Will pay to the Zambian government. Now, Zaki, mind you, we are looking at the current traffic volumes and what you call incremental projections.
Right.
Right now, the Honorable Minister of Transport and Logistics, according to his statistics, 10,000 vehicles use that road on a daily basis. With the growth in the economy that we project, with the growth in the country interlink, Lusaka, into what you call Congo, into Tanzania, and so on and so forth, this is bound to triple, which basically means that even that projection is very conservative. We may be looking at a figure of around $3 billion. Over and above that, in the 3 years during construction, there will be contractors, right? 20%. The president has been very clear, nothing less, 20%. And the Zambian contractors will have to advertise. Ambassador Mwamba's company has been given a contract, let's say $1 million to supply bitumen. It has to be transparent. Over and above that, how many people are going to be employed during the construction period? The movement in terms of traffic, people now who may wish to invest in high-speed buses, because of the dual carriageway, the speed limit will have to be adjusted so that you can allow speedy movement on goods and services. So it's exponential. The benefits are exponential. So I think for us, let us look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think there are many issues that Honorable Noel Nkhoma has raised, but let me go to the issues.
Raised or clarified?
Well, he's raised so many issues. But first of all, what informed the national tolling project? How come Zambia is earning over, I think, $27 to $30 million a year from the national tolling project? What informed that is that there were feasibility studies, one done by Group 5, government can look it up, another one done by RDM. This particular road has the highest number of traffic. I think currently it's raising us over $20 million a year. So it's a very profitable road. We should be very, very clear. Right. Secondly, it's projected, because the toll fee, the user fee you pay, the 20 kwacha, was introduced 7 years ago in 2017. It has never been increased. And it's raising you $20 million. A commercial operator will not charge you 20 kwacha. It is for this reason that they've increased in their design. There'll be 2 more new way bridges. There'll be, the number of toll stations are going to rise from 3 to 6. So their revenue will quickly double. The projected income for this road, revenue, in the next 25 years, I can estimate it will be between 2 to $2.5 billion. Yeah, that's how much it will be. Because the road is projected to roughly can raise up to $100 million a year if your toll charge, the user fee is commercial. Because currently, Zambia was trying out this national tolling project. Zambians had never paid a toll fee. So we introduced a very small fee, which was affordable, 20 kwacha. But a commercial operator, as you have seen, they will increase the number of toll stations, they'll put new motorway bridges. They want to reach the potential of raising $100 million a year. This $100 million, you're projecting that you will get money from Workers' Compensation Fund and from NAPSA, $400 million. This is money that can be paid in a period of 5-6 years. And this private concessionaire then can mint money for the next 20 years. There's another matter of concern. What they've done, which was signed on 28th February, is a commercial clause. Like he has said, they're now going to look for money wherever they will find the money. There's a financial clause coming. When the financial clause is done and the contractor moves on site, it takes over. During the period of construction, that 3 years, it takes over that revenue. The tolling will go to the concessionaire. There are those issues. But for us, it's the structure of just this PPP. But let me just answer this, Zach, before I lose my thought. Honorable Noel Nkhoma has demonstrated for the need for this road, and I've agreed. And all of us also have said it's been under procurement from 2017. All of us agree there is need to do this road. It will benefit the economy. It will create employment. It will build this economy. But we have seen now and again that when you have a national crisis, like we have at Mopani and KCM, like we have on the Ndola Lusaka Dual Carriageway, the cartels move in. That is why when you are the biggest pandemic crisis, 17 ministers from Africa were arrested. Using the crisis, corruption creeps in. Boris Johnson resigned over the issue of COVID, nothing else. You see, so in a crisis, a genuine crisis, you want a solutions. We also have to guard that there will be these corrupt decisions that may come in. And that is where our concern, if you want to go to NAPSA, you want to go to Workers' Compensation Fund Board.
It's not like these two institutions will be giving money for
no.
nothing. It's loaning the concessionaire.
Honorable Noel Nkhoma said something that, look, they have investment boards. It's not automatic. He says he doesn't even think that NAPSA will fund it. He doesn't know at this stage until they do the financial clause. I agree. But let's look at the structure of NAPSA. It's an act of parliament. The board is appointed by the president. It's under Minister Tamba, or all insurance and pension funds are under the minister. Do you think there's independent decisions there? If you have ministers from day one are telling us that NAPSA will fund this road, do you think the management and board at Workers' Compensation Fund Control Board at NAPSA will do something different? Honorable Minister was on radio, Honorable Minister, I think you must have heard him, Honorable Charles Milupi was on Hot FM. Again, he alluded to the issue of NAPSA financing. So these are public entities, they might have you and my money, but the control and management is by government.
But it's not like NAPSA doesn't have experience in funding roads. They have done it before.
They have. I think we have.
I think
we have demonstrated that up to 40-50% of money for our road sector budget is going back to paying NAPSA what it invested. Honorable Noel Nkhoma said NAPSA is not a construction company. We didn't say that. How have they built one of the best hotels in Southern Africa? So they got a contractor who built a hotel and has delivered it. They've got someone, Radisson Blue, who runs hotel. NAPSA doesn't run hotels. They've got a world competitive entity to run the hotel. The hotel remains NAPSA. The hotel belongs to the pensioners, and Radisson Blue is paying like tenant-landlord relationship. Such a turnkey project is worthy. If this government, as he has said, they want to retain resources here, they want to use domestic revenue, and we can use capital financing from here, there is an opportunity. Macro investment and Davik, no doubt, they built the airport, they built all this. We can contract them at a fee to build that road. They will deliver the road within 3 years. They will walk away. And we can get NRFA or any private collector for us to run it and collect that money for the next 22 years for NAPSA. That will be real money for Zambians. In this case, the money will be going to China the next 22 years if you get from
Mr. Nkhoma,
NAPSA and Workers' Compensation Fund.
What are the exit clauses of this contract?
Yeah, exactly. Extremely important. And just before Zaki, I just come to that. I just want to qualify one point. Is that NAPSA has got various investment, right? I want my brother, Ambassador Mwamba, to go and check how their investment portfolio in all these superstructures that they built. Here, let him know. Can you go and check what the occupancy rate is and whether it's giving them a return? Go to ECL more, right? Go and check their occupancy rate. You'll be lucky even ECL more to find that the occupancy rate is about 50%, right? So what we are saying here is that sometimes these pension funds should be directed to high impact investment. A shopping mall is not a high impact investment, right? Mm-hmm. A hotel is not a high impact investment. Right now, there are hotels which are even struggling to have 30% occupants. So to me, it's sometimes a misallocation of resources. To think that these are best suited to be able to churn out all these whatever. No. Let them invest just as the PIC is investing in South Africa where it has come from, but let also NAPSA make an investment decision, independent, to be able to make a choice whether they want to invest in the road or not. They have invested in roads. National Road Fund agents, why are the roads having potholes? My village in Chipata, we just came back from Uchwala. From Chongwe, even before you reach Chongwe, there are potholes. But how many toll gates do you have on this road? 3 toll gates. What is National Road Fund agency doing with their money? He mentioned that are collecting so many millions. They are not best suited for some of these assignments. If it's a private contractor, we shall call him out. But National Road Fund agency, who will call them out?
Government, they're under you.
No, but Ambassador Mom.
What is a minister?
Don't you see the potholes?
What is a minister? What is a minister?
No. These were inherited from you.
Yeah, but where is a minister?
The UPND inherited them. This culture from the PF.
Where is the head of NRFA? RDA.
You are getting money from NAPSA, giving National Road Fund Agency to do roads which are substandard for that matter. Substandard. But you will be able to see the difference when we do the Lusaka-Ndola dual carriage. You'll see the difference between these pension funds investing in a private entity, SPV, and investing through National Road Fund Agency. You'll see the difference. Let me just answer a question. What
I wanted you to answer this before he comes in. I said that the Lusaka-Ndola dual carriageway, as from feasibility study, has capacity to raise $100 million You know, so over a period of 25 years, it's $30 billion. I said 2.5. It's actually $30 billion. Government is saying they will earn $1.1 billion during the 22-year period. Where will the difference go?
Let me answer that.
So there is potential on this road, $30 billion.
Let me respond to that one. Ambassador Mwamba is not a financial analyst, right? So I don't know where he has gotten those figures from, but I can tell you.
No, I got them from a feasibility study, which informed the national tolling program that you are losing money on this on this road alone. You can raise up to $100 million. We didn't go for $100 million. We went for a 20 kwacha, which is raising us $20 million a year.
Yes.
So the feasibility study has been proven. The concept has been proven.
Absolutely.
But government charged a very low fee of 20 kwacha. Yes. A commercial contractor, like I said, might not charge you 20 kwacha. That's why the contractor is increasing toll stations.
Yes.
That's why he's putting more way bridges so that you pay frequently.
Okay,
and he can realize, I'll give you the chance, he can realize the potential $100 million a year on that road. Looking at the volume of traffic, I think it's assumed that we'll have up to, 40 million vehicles over the period of the concession. So if you look at the volume and it is incremental, like it might even go to 60 million.
Yeah.
And the money, if they charge commercial fee, the government NRIFA charge is not commercial. People should know that. It's literally a subsidized fee, 20 kwacha. Yeah. They will not charge 20 kwacha.
Yeah, let me respond. First of all, this is a public asset, right? The road is a public asset. We have not reached a stage as a country where we shall say, for people going to Kapiriposh, we are going to have a gravel road here, and we have got this high-value road. If you want free, go on the gravel road. If you want to pay, go on this one. We are very sensitive. Even the concession has been crafted in such a way that the toll fees that will be charged will be what you call, we will have to pass the price sensitivity test, right? So there will be no much movement from the 20, which is currently being charged, except the fact that it will be biannual and more or less inflation indexed. Right now, inflation is hovering around 10%. So 10% of 20 kwacha is how much? Maybe 1 kwacha? 2 kwacha. 2 kwacha, right? So what we are saying is that let us have that in mind, that this is a public facility. We should not overprice, but we should be. That is how there's a long concession period to also accommodate the price.
Let me give you an example. You cited South Africa. Yeah. There's a huge crisis over a PPP between Pretoria and Johannesburg. It was the Johannesburg authorities, because it was done under the municipal council, put an e-tolling facility. Yes. And you saw there was rebellion. And since the issue arose, they suspended. But government pays the concessionaire, because the concessionaire has an agreement.
Absolutely.
Our people can come and just say, Lusaka-Ndola, if you want to charge her, who will not pay? It becomes a social crisis.
That's what I'm saying.
So I'm answering to an issue where you were saying that government will spend no single way. Government will. I have heard the minister say there will be no sovereign guarantee.
Yes.
There could be. And one of the effects is the pressure they are putting on NAPSA. NAPSA, those are public funds. They belong to you and me directly because we are pensioners. So there is somehow a direct or indirect cost to government.
It's a commercial contract between the financier and the concessionaire, whereby you determine, they will be able to determine at what rate they are going to charge for the return on investment. So let's leave that commercial, private arrangement, Ambassador Mwamba. And let me just answer your question.
Yes, because we need to close.
Yeah, we need to close. You were talking about an issue in terms of what are the exit clauses.
Yes.
2 years before the end of the concession, the concessionaire is required to rehabilitate the whole road and hand over an asset as good as new to the government and the people of Zambia. That is a very important exit clause, right? And Ambassador Mwamba should understand that right now, this concessionaire, the PPP, is taking a risk in this project, right? And for every risk an investor takes, there has to be a reward. So to say that this road can pay back after 5 years and it should hand it over to government, no concession in the world under PPP operates like that. We've just come from Turkey, where we have seen how the concessions operate. We have come from Kenya. If you go to Nairobi now, there's a Nairobi Express. That is a concession for how many years? a concession, a Nairobi Express within town, within town, not outside town. How many kilometers is that Nairobi Express?
I think it's 45.
Right? Do you know what is the concession period for that? It's about 50 years, right? A road above the town. So we have seen what is happening. We have come from Turkey, as I mentioned to you, from Ankara. The road, it's not even a dual. It's multi. Maybe 6 lanes this side, 6 lanes that side, going in one direction and so on, connecting to Syria, with the border of Syria. We traveled on that road. It's a 70-year concession. So, are you telling me that with all these examples I've given you, 25-year concession with 3 years construction period is asking for too much?
No.
Zambia, first of all, Ambassador Mwamba, let me finish. Zambia is in a default economy, right? And any investor will have to think twice to invest in an economy which is in default or not. The macro-ocean investment have taken a risk, right? At a time that the economy is distressed. And that risk has to be rewarded. Thank you.
Well, we have to end here. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mwamba, for coming. And of course, Mr. Noel Nkhoma.
There'll be no last word.
You can make under a minute, please.
Yeah, we call upon government to look at the structure of the PPP. I think PPPs are welcome, as we've discussed them. Right. NAPSA can invest, but we think that NAPSA should not be directed or be forced to invest in an investment that first they have no appetite for, and that is unfair, where NAPSA is just being used as a mere lender. Of course, they'll pay back with some small interest that is required. You can calculate, but the benefit will really not go to this country. I'd like to thank my dear brother, Noel Nkhoma. I think this is a discourse we should encourage, where our different opinions can come to a table and discuss national issues. Without malice, I think this is the way to build discourse. The politics in this country are so toxic. We don't discuss issues. We don't build one another. There is a way in which we can discuss public issues for the benefit of our country. So we still call upon to look at our concerns that we have raised, and we hope that because you haven't come to a financial close, that you can take public concerns on this matter and see how you can implement them. Maybe you have to be forced to give equity to NAPSA and Workers' Compensation Fund Board to this investment, so that they are benefiting not just from the return of the loan and interest, but also dividends that will accrue. A lot of money will be made in the next 25 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Mwamba. You're concluding.
Just to thank you, Zach. Thank 5FM family. I think this has been extremely productive. I've engaged. I've appreciated the engagement with Ambassador Mwamba. I've learned a lot from him,
right.
And I think that what we should focus on as a country is to be able to deliver the development dividends to our people, right? This is an opportunity which is going to create jobs. This is a high impact investment, which is not also only going to create jobs, but also opportunities. And mind you, the engineers who are going to do this project are Zambian engineers, right? So we just want to look forward to constructive criticism. We are learning a lot. When this issue, after the signing of the concession, you realize that government did not come out firefighting. We let people like Ambassador Mwamba, who is extremely concerned and passionate about Zambia, speak out. The Minister of Finance, Honorable Dr. Simbeku, who is the chairperson of the PPP Council, said, please, let's hold our fire, let's listen. Let the people vent. Then when the people vent, let's now respond. And that's the process that we're doing. This morning, Honorable Milopi was on the radio. Tomorrow, I'm on radio. Tomorrow, Honorable Msukotwane is on, I think, TV. I'm on radio. But I think it's important that we get this feedback from the Zambian people. But all in all, I think this is a government which deserves to be given a chance. Let us execute on what we promised, our manifesto. And I can promise you that our desire is to leave Zambia a better place than we found it. I thank you.
I thank you both of you for coming, and thank you to